Call the meeting to order. Welcome to the August 15th, 2023 meeting of the Monroe Planning Commission. And we will have a roll call with Shawna Mathias present and Rosalind Parks. Mike Eccles is absent, and so is Nate Treadaway. I'm Randy Camp, and I'm acting chairman. We have a quorum here, and we'll begin the meeting. Do I have a motion for approval of the agenda?
Second.
Say aye in favor.
Aye.
Minutes of the previous meeting. Have you had a chance to read these and look through these? Any corrections or additions?
Nope.
Motion to approve?
Motion to approve?
Motion to approve. Second, thank you. All right. Minutes are approved. Report from the code enforcement officer.
I don't have anything to report to the Planning Commission this evening, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any old business? All right. Moving on to new business. First item on the agenda is request for a certificate of appropriateness, 703 West Spring Street, site modifications. Is anyone here in?
Let me do my presentation first.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. That's all right. So this is a certificate of appropriateness request in your corridor design overlay district. This is the site on the corner of Pinecrest Drive and West Spring Street, currently occupied by the Ace Hardware. They're asking for permission to make site modifications to add some features to their site, and I'll briefly go through those. So they're asking to add some outdoor features for their outdoor and seasonal sales features on the site, that being a propane tank, some pallet storage for their bulk supplies, a pine straw trailer, and they have added a seasonal platform, or platform for seasonal sales of outdoor items, and that's currently on the site now. And then they're also including some outdoor storage that's under a constructed drive-through for the former Rite Aid location. And they are proposing to screen this building, basically enclosing this structure from view. And all of the proposed changes comply with your corridor design overlay requirements. The recommendation is approval as submitted without conditions. That's all I have.
Is anyone here to speak in favor of this proposal? Would you come forward, please?
Please,
All right.
could we get him to come to the podium, please?
Would you come to the podium, please, and state your name?
Yes, John Raines.
Okay, John. Are there any questions? Hearing none. We'll call for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve?
A second. In favor, say aye.
Aye.
John?
Thank you.
Done, thank you. Next item, request for conditional use permit, 313 Ash Street, personal care home.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. This is a conditional use request for property at 313 Ash Street. This property is currently zoned R1A, and in the R1A district in Monroe, you are allowed to have a family personal care home as a conditional use. As you may have read in my staff report, a family personal care home as defined in our ordinance is for the purposes of care between 2 and 6 individuals inside of a residential character setting. So they are asking for a conditional use for the personal care home, a family personal care home at this location. And this is a Google Street view of the site itself. The site or the property does share a driveway with the property to the north at 311 Ash. And we've provided you the concerns of that neighbor that was submitted, I believe, Sunday to the staff. And the issues related to the report, we had identified several things, specifically the issues related to the shared use of a joint driveway for this type of facility, the inadequate parking that would be required for the personal care home is the reason for staff's recommendation of denial of this request. I'm happy to answer any questions at the appropriate time, Mr. Chairman. That's all I have.
Okay. Is anyone here to speak in favor of this proposal?
Keisha Titus Witter. We are going to submit we're going to submit some things so we could go ahead and get a second driveway on that side of the house. So the shared driveway would not be an issue if we apply to get the driveway approved. We know we know it'd have to be like a 10-foot driveway, so we're in the process of doing that.
Would that be on the other side of the house?
Okay, so, I'm sorry, could you repeat just a little bit? You're going to propose to submit a driveway permit to the city to add a second driveway, is that correct?
Yes,
All right,
a
so if
site.
we go back to your plat, I'm not trying to interrupt her presentation, Mr. Chairman, but I think right up front, this creates an issue for this property. Well, first things, we don't allow parking in the front yard of a residence. That's in your code of ordinances, so that's off the table. And in this case, your house comes all the way over to the right side of the property line, so we're not going to allow a driveway to be added and then any parking in the front of this structure. That's simply not going to be possible by the code of ordinances requirements.
So the parking would be in the back.
I don't know how you would get to the back if you're using a shared driveway with your adjoining neighbor.
You're saying we are not able to cut a driveway
On the
at
other
the side of
side?
the house?
Your house touches the south property line.
That's a vacant lot right there.
Right, you don't own that property.
No, we don't, but we're saying according to when I call the code enforcement, they're saying that I have to have 10 feet of driveway in order to get to the back of the property, which is what we're gonna end up doing, based on the property line.
How would you get there? Your house physically touches the property line here on the south side of your property. How are you going to get around the south side of the house?
Please,
I'm sorry?
can you blow it up for us, please? So I can see exactly.
This is a PowerPoint presentation. I cannot zoom this in any further. But this is the plat you submitted with your application. I can provide a copy of it to you right here. But I can read what it says. It says overhang of roof is 0.04 feet across the property line. There is a 2-foot wide easement around the side of the house. So that's on the adjoining property. So your house abuts the property line.
We will talk to the neighbor and get permission from the neighbor in order to actually utilize the shared driveway with them, which is what we intended to do, but we are unable to communicate with the neighbor since no one physically live at that residence, according to the last time I've been over there. Thank you.
Did we get your name, sir, and your
My name
address?
is Patrick Witter. I'm her husband. Can I collect this?
Absolutely.
So, once we're able to contact someone, then we'll able to actually get some kind of communication in writing where we're able to physically share the driveway, because based on when I pulled up Google Map, we actually have half of that driveway and they have another half.
That's correct.
So I would like to ask some permission so we can actually have permission to actually get this approved, so we can actually move forward.
Not to try to interject or steal the chairman's thunder, but at this juncture, I mean, it may be appropriate for you to withdraw this application until you have that permission. Otherwise, this commission has to make a recommendation to city council moving forward with the application as it stands. I don't know what they're going to decide to do this evening. I'm not suggesting they're going to go the direction of the staff's recommendation, but being that you would like to negotiate with the neighbor, potentially that would be an option to you guys.
Because you just withdraw the options that we were interjecting, which is direct another driveway.
Yeah, that's physically impossible.
You just took that away from us, so.
I didn't take anything away from you. Your property, literally, you physically could not build a driveway on someone else's property. That would not be possible in the city of Monroe.
Okay.
But I would encourage, though, if you are willing and trying to work with your neighbor, and because you have an existing shared driveway with that neighbor, if they're willing, you know, and if they're okay with you using the shared drive for this purpose and maybe adding some features behind your house to allow for parking behind your house.
And I've spoken to the brother of the sister.
They approve it, but you said that we have to get it in writing. So
Actually,
that's what we're gonna do.
We received an objection to your CUP request from that neighbor on Sunday.
Oh, she actually responded to you, because I
We
spoke to the
published
brother
that.
on Saturday.
Is it in the packet? So we published her objection in our, we didn't receive it until Sunday. We published our packet on Friday, and we provided that objection to the planning commission. So we received an email objection to the request for a variety of reasons. And I'm not going to read all of those off, but we did provide them to the planning commission. Their concern was the use of the driveway. They didn't grant permission for this use. There were a variety of other things that I don't recall off the top of my head, but there was a simple objection. And so if there's a possibility that you could work things out with your neighbor, the correct course of action at this point will be to withdraw this application and try to pursue that route, or you could continue and let the planning commission make their recommendation and city council make a final decision. If the decision by city council is denial, it would be a year before you could reapply.
Okay. All right, thank you.
What is your
Are you-
request for action tonight to withdraw?
Right now, since we're undecided as to whether or not we're gonna be able to contact that neighbor and actually get something in writing, they are communicating with them, but they're not communicating with us. And he does have my number, she does have my number to call me. No one has called me, but obviously she has called code enforcement and let them know that they're objecting to us sharing that driveway, which I don't see why the reason they'll be objecting for us sharing that driveway when no one physically lives there, and I've never seen anyone there. And we're not gonna, like I explained to the brother, there's not gonna be any physical traffic going to that driveway other than our personal vehicles. And besides from myself and my wife, we're the only one that's been on our property. So there's not gonna be any workers or anyone being there. And we're also gonna erect a
I'm sorry,
fence on the
Can I
property.
ask a question? I'm not trying to interrupt you, but you've proposed there to be 2 employees at the personal care home. That's 2 parking spaces alone.
That's my wife and myself.
And then you're required to have 2 additional spaces for your residents. So you need at least 4 parking spaces.
The residents does not need to have a parking space because they're,
I'm telling you what our code requires.
oh, okay.
So our code is going to require there to be at least 2 parking spaces for each of the residents. Now, if you occupy both those spaces, so be it. But I was just going by what y'all had written in the application. You had 2 employees, and so my thinking was 2 employees, 2 parking spaces for the residents who live there.
That's the reason why we're gonna erect a fence so we could park in the back. So we wouldn't really physically be on the driveway, so everything will be in the back, which is what I explained to the brother.
Did you explain to the brother that you were doing you were going to operate a personal
Yes.
care home?
Yes.
Okay.
And I have not spoken to the sister.
Yeah, my impression from the owner, they are renovating the structure, so that's why no one lives there. I'm taking them on their word. My job is not to call people out. So that's what they said, and I believe them.
No problem.
Do you wish to withdraw? Because denial is going to push it off another year
Want to withdraw?
if you reapply.
We'll withdraw and reapply.
Okay, you withdraw and reapply.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. We don't need to vote on that, do we? We don't need-
That technically, I mean, that was the withdrawal of the request. Is that for the minutes, I guess, of the request itself?
Is anyone else here to speak for or against this proposal? Because I think the applicant has withdrawn his motion
That was-
request. If not, we'll move on to the next item.
I think, just note that the applicant has noted to withdraw the request until,
Yes.
so that way they can resubmit any time and meet a
Right.
future deadline at any given point. Once they get this resolved, then there's no delay in moving forward if they resubmit.
Correct. All right, item number 3. Request for rezone 635 James Huff Road, Madison Ridge, R1A to PRD.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a rezone request for a property out on James Huff Road. It's approximately 49 acres. It was annexed into the city back in 2006 and zoned to R1A at that time. They are now asking for a rezone to PRD per council's new requirement, as you may recall from this past spring or this late winter, requiring all undeveloped R-zone properties in the city to be zoned to a planned district. So they're here tonight to ask for compliance with that requirement. They're proposing a planned district rezone. They have a pattern book that's included with their application that proposed standards for their development. It's basically the same development that was proposed 17 years ago. It's 129 single-family detached lots. They've added a second entrance off Old Athens Highway to comply with our current development regulations. So there's two entrances to the site, one off James Huff and then one off Old Athens Highway. It's pretty straightforward. They're proposing minimum standards, and their housing styles, there are none to present. They are proposing to comply with the city's minimum requirements for house construction. That's section 910 of your zoning ordinance. It's relatively straightforward. There are some concerns, though, that I know that council has stated in the past regarding some of our subdivision development in the city. These are reflective in the conditions proposed. I know that council in the past has said that they would like to see the backs of homes away from roadways and increase landscape between those spaces. So the two conditions that were proposed are to address council's concerns for future developments in the city. We're asking that the minimum lot size be 10,000 square feet. They're proposing that their lots adjacent to the road be smaller, which would put the houses close to the roadway. And the second is to provide some clarity as to what can be in a landscape buffer. They didn't propose any details, but we're asking that these minimums be placed in there to provide some minimum vegetation to be included in the landscape buffer. And those are the two conditions that I have. That's all that I have, Mr. Chairman. Oh, I'm sorry. And the recommendation is approval with those two conditions.
Is there anyone here to speak in favor of this proposal?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Planning Commissioners. Taylor Anderson. I'm a representative for the applicant. We are in agreement with the two conditions and accept staff's recommendation. That's all we have for this evening, unless you have any questions.
What are going to be the prices of the homes?
I think that's to be determined. I'd have to defer to the property owners. I think that's to be determined at this point from the force.
The square footage of each, of the smallest house?
It would be in compliance with the R1A standards under the PRD zoning, which would be 1,500 square feet on the single story and 1,500 square feet for a two-story.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Is anyone here to speak in opposition to this proposal? Please come forward. State your name, please.
My name is Janice Baldwin. I live at 585 James Huff Road, and I'm also here to represent my neighbor, which is the property that is right adjacent to that. I know we're really not opposed. I'm a realtor. I've been a realtor for 25 years. The biggest concern is it's been farmland for probably 50 years, and what are they going to do when they develop it in reference to the creek that's back there, because there's a retention pond that's right next to the creek and along the property line in the mountains.
Okay.
I know that the county and the city have done some really good landscaping with the fronts of the neighborhoods, but that's all farmland.
And so what do you propose to,
I mean, some sort of a buffer behind the houses that are going to run along that entire track.
I can briefly address her comment. There's a substantial area of floodplain behind the rear lots that are proposed along the east side of the site right there, and you can see there's a substantial distance between.
That's not the part I'm talking about. I'm talking about.
This is the creek in the back, so
Right.
I thought that's what you were.
There's a retention pond back there, but I'm talking about all the lots that are going to be on the very bottom of what you're looking at.
The south side of the
Yes.
property here. Yeah, there's this old pond here, I believe, and there's some
Yes.
floodplain here. They're proposing to mitigate that.
And I'm talking about what kind of a buffer are they going to put between the
There-
backs of the houses too?
Good question. There are no buffers proposed against the south property line.
And I'm asking if one can be added. I mean, there's
I'll
a
leave that
bunch
up
of
to the
creeks,
planning
and wet weather creeks and creeks that go through there, and they're going to disturb the entire environmental area the way that pond is a spring-fed pond. It's not just a rainwater pond.
If it's true that that's a spring water pond, then a lot of our environmental requirements are going to kick in, and that's going to pretty much eliminate their ability to put any lots in that part of the development. They're going to lose probably 7, 8 lots right there if that's the case.
I mean, I've lived there
We
for
wouldn't
25
even
years.
allow development to occur where there's a spring in the city. That has to be protected with a 75-foot impervious buffer. I'm not aware that that's a spring head. I don't have any data to tell me that's a spring-fed pond. It was an old farm pond. I know it was a long time ago. I don't have any data to tell me that's a spring-fed pond. I can research that further and see where we go from there. Normally, if that came up, that would have probably been an issue that I would identify in the conditions, just so you know. So, I mean, I do try to do my homework on those.
I mean, I've lived there, and I know since they bought it, I've walked all over where it backs up to me and my neighbor's property. Well, my neighbor's really, but, my kids all have been all over that pond and everything, and I haven't seen anybody do any work over there. So I don't know, I think that whoever looked at it just assumed it's literally a wet weather pond. It's not. It's continually filled with water,
It is continually.
always. In 25 years that I've lived there, it's always had water.
Does the developer want to address these questions? Thank you. We'll get back to the other oppositions in a minute, but I think he needs to have a chance to respond to this.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, this pond was dry when we bought the property, so, and it has been vetted. The property's been through an environmental test, a wetlands test, and all the wetlands were identified. All the wetlands are along the creek. The property line at the south of the properties, there's no wetlands in that area. Everything runs from James Huff Road down to the creek. The creek runs, as you can see, away from James Huff Road at the south property line. So there's been nothing identified there as a spring-fed pond or any wetlands outside of the creek buffer.
Well, you do have a wetlands permit for that to remove that pond.
Right.
I mean, that was identified on the plans itself.
Correct.
This is for an old NWS permit.
That's right. That's exactly what he just said, is
Right.
a permit to fill it in because it was dry.
Okay. All right, thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to speak in opposition?
It's not dry.
I'm sorry, but you need to give someone else an opportunity to speak.
I think we do.
We have to let everyone who's,
I think we
this
need
is
to
not a rebuttal.
let someone else speak in opposition if they wish to.
Hi, my name's Connie Bentley, and I live on Old Athens Highway, which the part of the new driveway will be coming out onto Old Athens Highway, and these back homes will now be what I'll be seeing every day. Now, I'm going to speak for a lot of people in our community here. The citizens in the community of this proposed rezoning are opposed to this request from R1A to BRD. The original rezone was back in 2006, and the specifications were they were not to be less than 1,800 square feet was the homes that were to be built there. They were to be ranch style and 2,000 square feet for a two-story. So you had differentiation, which we were okay with that. All homes will have two-car garages. There will be no vinyl siding allowed, and the front elevations will include brick, stone, or stucco. And it was stated that the density of 2.65 for the project and 100% of the homes will have, like I said, two-car garages. The new proposal that is stated says 1,500 square feet for both one-story and two-story homes. You will have 4 units per acre, and it does not mention garages. The architectural requirements include a mix of stone, brick, and fiber cement siding, and it says vinyl siding shall be prohibited. Will be prohibited. Home styles will be craftsman, farmhouses, or traditional in compliance with the 9.10.1 of the city zoning ordinance. On page 65 of your ordinance manual, it says all dwellings shall be constructed, and it will have cement base and vinyl and aluminum siding is prohibited, and those, so it should not be on there at all. The builder's proposal is not really in accordance with your city ordinance. On page 58 of your requirements, on 650.5C, an explanation of why the proposed development standards are necessary if the proposed standards vary from existing standards in the ordinance. so they're requesting to change it. After checking the statement on page 29, number 1 of the staff rezone report under staff analysis, the basis for this rezone request is to comply with the requirement to rezone all new single-family residential development to a planned district. The only reason to rezone from the original R1A to PRD is for the purpose of clustering, as stated on page 57, section 650.1 of your City Monroe Zoning and Ordinance Manual. To encourage creative site design is what it states, to conserve energy through efficient building and clustering. That's the only reason they want to change it, is to get more homes in there. This is not something that is required, but as the City of Monroe states, it's a flexible zoning technique. Page 58, section 650.5, number E, the traffic report. According to the staff analysis on page 29, number 4, a traffic study was not submitted with this rezone request. The reason stated was because only 250 feet of frontage on James Huff Road belongs to the city. The remainder belongs under the authority of Walton County. According to page 58 of your zoning ordinance, section 650.5, number E, the traffic report is required unless a more extensive study is requested by the code enforcement officer. This is not acceptable. There's enormous amount of traffic already on James Huff Road, including 18-wheelers that are not allowed. The speed limit is 55 miles an hour down through there, the same as if you're on Highway 78. If you're wanting to approve all these homes, thinking there'll only be one car per one house, and that they will only travel the AM peak hour and the PM peak hour, according to the applicant's Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation charts, which I looked that up because I didn't know what that was. And it's basically a factor that they go by a chart that says personal trip production includes, they look at your income, vehicle ownership, and your household structure and family size. And it says if you expect the overall traffic impact to be minor, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry, it's not. And this is 2023, and most homes have more than one vehicle. And you know, and to me, with them saying the income in the area, then they're trying to say we can't afford decent homes or a car. All of these homes had no problem. Is it being passed off as a county problem with the speed and the traffic? This is unacceptable, and we're all insulted. Page 30 of your staff analysis. It is stated, because the property is located at the city's edge and accessed through mostly unincorporated areas, fire and police response times to this development will be prolonged, which means it's going to take them a while to get out there. So if I or my neighbors are in need, it's going to be a while because it's too clustered out there. I don't know about you, but if I was made aware of this problem and voted anyway to change this zoning, I would not be able to sleep at night. Please consider our plea not to change the zoning to allow cluster homes to be built in our neighborhood. Most of us that live here have lived here in Monroe and Walton County all of our lives, and we don't mind growth and we don't mind it being developed, but let's grow with some dignity. Let's have a little dignity if we're going to put homes there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak in opposition?
Hello, my name is Amy Peroni, and my property is directly across from the entrance on Old Athens Highway. It's 1400 Old Athens Highway. And on my property, I have 9 acres, and the stream runs through my property. And there are about 150 springs that feed in to that property, so into that creek. So I'm sure that there are a lot on the other side as well. I too have seen that pond full every time I've been back there. My one concern, besides the ones that have not already been addressed, is a particular tree that's in the center of this property. And I've spoken with the Georgia Forestry Commission, and if you're familiar with the Champion Tree program, it beats the current champion tree, which is a swamp laurel, and it is larger than any other tree in Georgia, and it's directly in the center of that property. And I would like that tree not to be cut down. Thank you.
I believe this gentleman has something to
I
say.
think we need to continue on with letting the opposition, those that have not spoken, give them an opportunity to speak. In all fairness, this is not a continued, you're having a public hearing, so that I would give all those that are in opposition a chance to speak that have already, and those that have already spoken have had their chance.
All right.
I'm a 40-year resident of that area, and what Ms. Bentley has just spoke about is all true. As far as the study with the stream, there are springs there because there's a lake across from my house. I live at 946 James Huff Road. Tree line, pond. The creek runs across Gratis Road into the pond, also across Highway 78. With that being said, also there is also a graveyard back there with stones. 1823 Glasson purchased lot number 130, third dot of Walton County from John Mason, who got it from Stephen Cummings of Putnam County from lottery 2/7/1823, 200-acre tract. 17 graves with undisturbed, I can't see it, rocks, headstones, and footstones. Halfway between the cemetery and the road, 6 to 8 graves marked with field stones, possibly slave graves. I'm saying this because traffic on this highway is horrible. It's a cut-through. I just recently requested a traffic study. The last study, they told us that cars come around that curve at 90 miles an hour. I have been almost hit 3 times pulling out of the driveway, not backing out. I look to the left, I look back to the right. When I look to the left, nothing's coming. When I pull out, here's a car or a truck. Density, this right here is backdoor stuff. Years ago, they tried to annex our property, that area, into the city, and we spoke against it then. This section that has been annexed into the city is backdoor. If I wanted to live in the city, I would have moved into the city of Monroe. I am a part of this city, but I'm a part of this county. As an educator, growth on this side of Walton County has been slow, particularly on the east side. I don't mind, but let's do it decent in order. Please. We see what's happening with Gwinnett County, and I understand what you were saying about the tax dollars. The more houses, the more tax dollars. Let's do this right. Too much density brings a whole lot of things that we do not desire.
Ask a question, just to be clear, that cemetery you described, is that on the property or adjacent to the property?
That's on the property. Mm-hmm. because there is a graveyard also behind her house on the opposite side of the street also. So, I mean, for those that are coming in, please ask the people that have lived there, because I've been across the street to that lake with the beavers and everything, because that runs straight across that property. There are springs and there's to see this table.
Any more opposition?
Any more opposition?
I think you got to have the applicant a chance to
Yeah.
rebut
Yeah, I
the
think the
comment.
developer
If I
needs to-
could, quickly, with all due respect, we've had environmental studies, we've had Alta surveys. There's been no cemetery identified. Everything that's been identified has already been addressed with the application and proposal that was turned in to the city. And as far as the density, we're not asking for any more houses than this property's already zoned. This is not a rezone. We purchased this property already zoned and platted for 129 houses, and we're ready to move forward with construction drawings, and the city has made some changes to the way the application and the approval process moves forward in the city. So this is not a rezone. We're not asking for any more houses. This is exactly what this property's currently zoned for and already been approved for. We're not adding any more lots. It's the same number of lots. And we've agreed to all the conditions that were previous there as far as building quality, $400,000 homes. And so we politely ask that the Planning and Commission agree with the staff and approve this request. Thank you.
Well, then we'll need a motion.
Based on what's come forward, I feel like this needs to be tabled and gone out to the site and made sure the cemetery is actually there. That is an actual spring. That's where I'm at.
Plus with if there is constant water there, you were saying that some of these are gonna be eliminated anyway, the possibility to build on.
You want me to, I can clarify that. So, I mean, back in 2006, when this was first annexed into the city, they were on the track at that time prior to the crash of 2007, 2008. They had pursued the permits to develop the property at that time with the city, and they had a national wetlands permit to erase that wetlands. Basically, they had credit somewhere else to eliminate that wetland, and it's actually listed on the plan itself, if I'm not mistaken, the permit from that time. It may need to be updated. I can't sit here and confidently say that there's a spring there or there isn't a spring there. I don't have that information. You have anecdotal information tonight, hearing that it is. If you want to let the applicant, give them an opportunity to prove otherwise or verify otherwise to satisfy the Planning Commission's decision-making. You mentioned the graveyard and the springs. I mean, that could be a part of your motion in the tabling, that the applicant provide that information before the next Planning Commission meeting. That's,
You wanna include it in your motion?
Yes.
All right, I'll second that,
Second
to
that,
table,
to table it.
yes.
Then the motion's table. You have an
but
opportunity
I would
to
add
address those.
that you're asking the applicant to provide those two pieces of information with your motion and your second
Yes,
to staff prior to the next Planning Commission.
yes.
Updated information, not just 2006.
Right, well, I think they, but they're all here tonight, so I think they understand exactly what the Planning Commission's intent was by that tabling motion for those two pieces of information, correct?
Yes.
The traffic is gonna be a monster. I know that, I travel that road frequently too.
All right, so the motion to table it,
To table.
say aye.
Aye.
Motion's table. Further study.
All right, so we will be back here next month to hear that item, and the applicant has approximately 28 days, I guess, to get the thing back to me. I would just ask that the applicant please get in touch with me as soon as possible. I think it would have been some of your if you have topographic detail, because I've got a survey that was required with your application. So if you have a topo survey with that identify, because your survey is required to identify Spring Head.
Okay.
And so if you can get us a topo of that property that shows that, and I would think in that topo analysis, it would show any potential grade markers.
Yeah, we
and
just
stones.
pulled it up and it shows no when it says holding water, because I mean, I've walked the property. I don't know how they could be on our property inspecting our property at this time, but it appears that there's children and neighbors that are trespassing, but we will be glad to address any question that you have and bring it next. Thank you for your time.
I have another question regarding traffic on that road.
Are we talking about the next item, or
No, we're on this
taking
item.
a
No, we're still
motion
on
and you
this one.
voted?
It's been tabled.
So
Okay,
you've taken a motion and you've tabled it, and
Yep.
we have to move on the agenda.
okay.
All right.
I'm sorry, but we're conducting a public hearing this evening, and we're on to the next agenda item.
The motion's been tabled. We're moving to the next item.
Which means they can come back next month.
Yes,
This item will be back here at the planning commission meeting next month.
yes.
This,
Item number 4, request for preliminary plat approval of the Vines of Monroe, 455 Vine Street.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a preliminary plat request for the Vines of Monroe. This is a project that was approved by City Council several years ago and had a preliminary plat approved. They have started development on the site, and that preliminary plat has since expired. They're here tonight to ask for permission to get reapproval for that preliminary plat so they can continue development of the property. This is 100 acres, roughly 101 acres, and it's for 220 lots, and has 2 entrances off of Vine Street. And as I had previously indicated, this was approved by City Council, I believe it was back in '21, and like I had mentioned, it has previously expired. So they are asking for their permission tonight to get approval. The recommendation is approval as submitted without any conditions, and that's all that I have.
Anyone here to speak for this proposal? Yes, sir.
Chad Locklear, 556 Cook Road, Oxford, Georgia. Just here on behalf of the applicant, agree with Mr. Calendar's assessment and to move forward.
All right. Anyone here to speak in opposition? Thank you. Hearing none, we'll call for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. And that concludes our meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.